The studio lights were blinding, and the air was heavy with the unmistakable scent of political tension. The kind that clung to every corner of the set like static before a storm. Jasmine Crockett sat poised in her seat, her crimson blazer glowing. Under the spotlight, every inch of her body language radiating calm confidence. Across from her, Marjorie Taylor Greene was already visibly irritated, tapping her manicured nails on the desk in an impatient staccato that carried over the microphones. The audience was silent, the camera operators holding their breath. Because everyone in that room knew that when these two women shared a stage, civility was the first casualty. The moderator had barely finished the introduction when Jasmine leaned forward, her voice smooth and cutting as a blade. "You know, Marjorie," she began, with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes, "it's hard to take your lectures on loyalty seriously when your own political hero just left. You stranded." Greene's eyes narrowed instantly, but Jasmine wasn't done, not even close. She adjusted her microphone, took a deliberate sip of water, and continued. "Donald Trump, the man you've spent years defending, the one you've practically turned into your personal religion, dropped you like yesterday's news the moment you stopped being useful. How does it feel to be publicly abandoned by the very person you thought would stand by you no matter what?" A murmur rippled through the audience, a sound Greene instantly recognized as the crowd leaning toward Jasmine's side. Marjorie inhaled sharply, her mind scrambling for a retort, but her frustration betrayed her. Her voice cracked as she started to speak. "That's a lie," she blurted, but Jasmine's hand shot up with the elegance of someone who knew exactly how to dominate the stage. "Please, don't interrupt," she said, her tone patronizingly polite. "We're all eager to hear how you explain the fact that Trump didn't even mention your name at his last rally after you flew all the way there to support him. You stood backstage like a loyal puppy waiting for your master to throw you a bone, and instead, nothing. Silence. No acknowledgement. Not even a thank you." The words landed like sharp darts, each one embedding itself deeper into Greene's composure. The viewers at home were glued to their screens. Twitter timelines were already exploding with hashtags mocking Greene's fall from Trump's graces. The moderator tried to cut in, but it was too late. Jasmine had smelled blood in the water, and she wasn't about to let up. "For years, you've made your political identity about being his most aggressive defender, even when he said or did things that were indefensible." Jasmine pressed, her voice now tinged with incredulity. "And for what? So he could turn around and treat you like you don't even exist? I mean, it's giving desperate energy." The audience laughed, not a loud roar, but the kind of chuckle that was far more devastating because it meant they were in on the joke. Greene's cheeks flushed crimson, her eyes darting toward the cameras as if silently begging them to cut. Too commercial. But the feed was live, and there was no escape. Jasmine's words hung in the air like smoke after a fire, and Greene knew every second she stayed silent, the more it looked like Jasmine had struck a nerve that could not be defended. Jasmine leaned back in her chair now, almost relaxed, as if she were a cat toying with its prey. The audience could sense it. The camera zoomed in slightly, capturing the faint smirk playing at the corners of her lips. "Let's not pretend this is the first time," Jasmine said, her tone dripping with the kind of mock sympathy that cut deeper than outright insult. "We've seen this pattern over and over. Trump using people as long as they're convenient, and then discarding them like empty soda cans once they're dented. You used to be front row, center stage, riding on his coattails. Now, you're not even on the guest list." Greene gripped her note cards so tightly that one corner bent, her knuckles blanching white. She opened her mouth again to fire back, but Jasmine beat her to it, raising a perfectly manicured finger like a traffic cop halting a reckless driver. "And don't try to spin it as you taking the high road. The high road doesn't involve spending the entire rally backstage, hoping for your name to be called like a kid waiting to be picked for dodgeball. You weren't overlooked. You were intentionally ignored. It's a difference." The audience laughed again, louder this time, the sound ricocheting through the studio like a chorus of gleeful witnesses. Greene's eyes flashed a mixture of humiliation and rage, but her training in public combat wasn't enough to save her from this one. She reached for her water, taking a long sip to buy herself time, but the tremor in her hand betrayed her. Jasmine seized the moment, tilting her head in faux curiosity. "I'm just wondering, what do you even do now? Is there a Marjorie 2.0? Or are you going to keep waiting by the political phone for Trump to call you back? Because, honey, he's not calling. He's moved on to the next headline, the next face he can use, until they too outlive their usefulness." Greene slammed her glass down harder than she meant to, the sound echoing across the set like a gavel striking in judgment. The moderator tried again to interject, his voice pitched high with the urgency of someone trying to prevent a televised implosion. But neither woman was listening anymore. The energy in the room had shifted. It was no longer a debate, it was a dismantling. Jasmine's voice lowered, almost conspiratorial, as if speaking directly to Greene but letting the millions watching at home feel like they were eavesdropping on a private humiliation. "And you know what's wild? The minute he ditched you, you didn't even fight back. You just accepted it. The firebrand who used to bark back at anyone who looked at her wrong is now standing in the corner hoping he notices her again. That's not power, Marjorie. That's pathetic." The camera caught Greene's jaw clenching, her eyes blinking rapidly in a losing battle to hold back the emotional flood that threatened to break through. Somewhere off stage, a producer made the frantic wrap-it-up gesture. But the segment still had time left, and Jasmine Crockett was going to use every second of it to etch this moment into political TV history. It was then that the moderator, perhaps sensing the implosion nearing its climax, attempted a desperate pivot. "Let's move on to the economy," he began, but his words were drowned out by the sharp, derisive laugh that erupted from Jasmine's side of the table. She leaned in, her elbows resting on the desk, her voice dropping low enough to force every microphone to strain for her words. "You know, Marjorie, for someone who talks a lot about America first, you sure spend a lot of time putting Trump first. Even now, with him casting you aside like a cheap campaign prop, you're still here defending him instead of standing up for yourself or your district. What exactly is the loyalty reward program here? You get points for public humiliation?" The audience exploded into laughter and applause, some even standing, their cheers feeding Jasmine's momentum. Greene's lips moved as if forming a response, but nothing coherent came out. Her voice faltered under the weight of the crowd's derision. Jasmine pressed on, her words like a surgeon's scalpel slicing away the remnants of Greene's pride. "I'll tell you what I think happened," she said, her tone shifting to that of a prosecutor delivering closing arguments. "Ditch you because you were wrong about something. He ditched you because someone shinier came along. And deep down, you know that's exactly how he sees people, as disposable tools. You thought you were the exception? Turns out you're just another example." Greene's face twitched, her jaw tightening so sharply it seemed like it might crack. "You have no idea what you're talking about," she managed, her voice trembling with barely suppressed fury. But Jasmine only smiled, leaning back as if she'd already won the case. "Oh, I know exactly what I'm talking about. And so, does every voter watching this right now?" Her gaze locked onto Greene's, a silent challenge hanging in the air. For a moment, it seemed as though Greene might lunge across the desk, the tension in her shoulders coiled like a spring. But instead, she turned away, eyes fixed on some distant point beyond the cameras, as if retreating into a place where Jasmine's words couldn't reach her. By the time the segment wrapped, the damage was irreversible. Social media was a wildfire, clips of the exchange already being dissected, memed, and shared millions of times before Greene had even left the building. Hashtags like #Trump, ditched Marjorie, and #Crockett clap back were trending worldwide. In the green room afterward, producers and staff whispered in hushed tones, their eyes flicking toward Greene's closed dressing room door, behind which a muffled, angry rant could occasionally be heard. Jasmine, on the other hand, was the picture of composure. Scrolling through her phone, smirking as she saw the flood of supportive messages and viral posts, she knew she'd struck a blow that would linger far beyond this broadcast, one that would haunt Greene in every interview, every campaign stop, every whispered conversation in Washington's back halls. And for Trump, watching somewhere from a gilded living room, there was no doubt he'd noticed the shift Greene's aura. of untouchability had been shattered, and Jasmine had been the one to do it live, without flinching.